Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Ray the Flying Squirrel here, and I am back for the likes of the Mexi Toys videos. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome back for some more of Let's Play of Splatoon for the Nintendo Wii U. So, last time, we basically almost completely done every single aspect in terms of the second world in a single player campaign, although mind you though, we only missing for about 3 scroll pages here and there. But let's be honest here, I'll be back for those probably at some point just before we make our way to the final stretch of the game, basically. So because of that, yeah, everything else checks out there, basically. So yeah, and also we did somehow manage able to take down the forms of Octonozzle. So oh no, we actually did that fight, no problem whatsoever. So you can get the idea for that point. So today, for this video, is that we are about to be heading over into the next world in a single player campaign, which takes place in World 3. So if you couldn't tell already, it's about the fact that just like the second world, we obviously still need to try to obtain 6 more of those Zap fishes, so just in case we can able to actually move along to the next world. And suffice to say, for this point guys, we actually onto the halfway point of this particular story mode so far. So logically though, for the fact that thankfully though, unlike the defaults of how it does it back in 2017 back then, that's where the fact that the actual uploading schedules for this never continues until specifically in this year in 2025 that it is now possible we can now finally get a chance of playing, you know, the Splatoon games basically. So anywho, so as usual, we're able to try to activate those particular obstacles here and there. So just in case for quicker travels here and there, likely try to find some more levels here and there when it comes to likely trying to find these invisible kettles and all that stuff. So because of that, yeah, everything else checks out there to see how this particular structure of this Let's Play plays out to be. Although, same applies to the forms of not only Splatoon 2, but in addition to Splatoon 3 coming up. So because of that, although at this point right about now, let's not get ahead of ourselves at this point right about now, because even then though, we can able to actually just go ahead and, well, trying to find these invisible kettles before we're able to actually dive straight into the first stage of this world. So anywho, so with that being said though, there are a few things I want to talk about this though, and that's what appears to be for the fact that, well, today's date of course there is the 19th of November today, in some cases in 2025 today, and it seems to be more specifically that Sonic Racing Cross World's next DLC for the likes of the Season Pass, usually, for instance though, the SpongeBob SquarePants collaboration DLC has recently came out today. Although I have already touched upon Sonic Racing Cross Worlds for some time, but that's mainly because, as you can definitely tell, I'm still busy playing for Splatoon for right about now. And after I'm done with this particular recording session on this, then I should probably able to actually try to check out, you know, the SpongeBob SquarePants collaboration DLC and Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, because I've heard so many good things about it though, especially for the fact that the last previous DLC that we've already got, since like roughly about a month ago, by the forms of the Minecraft, Steve and Alex and Creeper as playable characters. So yeah, you get the idea about that, and I, unfortunately though, to tell you the truth, is about the fact I do apologize for that particular commentary, because it's a bit slightly iffy sometimes, because even then, I know for the fact it has been about a couple of hours since I actually have last played this game for sure. Although straight to the point though is about the fact that we can easily guarantee to able to conclude this particular game until specifically by the end of the month in November, just before Christmas is just around the corner and everything else checks out there in terms of the forms of any other uploading schedules front. So because of that, and hopefully by that time and during at some point in this coming weekend, then obviously though it's pretty obvious that Blaze the Cat will definitely continue playing through Donkey Kong Country 3 for the Game Boy Advance. So yeah, you can pretty much get the idea of how this is going. So, and also straight to the point though actually, is that Stuart, or Cap King 34, he's now on to the 4th area now, in terms of Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube. Or to be more accurate though, Luigi's Hidden Mansion PAL version, just because, well, obviously though, he attempts to able to actually go through Boo Loss's boss fight with a very different mechanic compared to the forms of how it does it in the North American version and the Japanese version as well. So logically so for the fact that you can able to actually have a ride on the Poltergust 3000 while at the same time though try to fight against with that particular Boo Loss's fight. So, and as far as I'm aware, that the results are pretty much exactly the same as the forms of how it does it in our version when it comes to tackling through Boo Losses in Hidden Mansion playthrough. Like, for instance, though, that we somehow got the bronze frame, but that's okay, because even then, that we still managed to fully 100% everything in terms of Luigi's Mansion for the GameCube, because even then, I was able to actually try to prefer the original GameCube version a lot more compared to the 3DS version, like what Luigi did somehow point out, since back in Evolves in 2023, so yeah, you can get the idea about this particular process as far as you can definitely tell. But I digress. So, yeah, the next thing I want to discuss upon actually is that, did you guys know, it's been 20 years since the fact that no matter what though, that there's a film called Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, because obviously that film did originally came out in 2005, which believe it or not though, that particular film does contain David Tennant as the actor, that he was before the 10th Doctor in Doctor Who, and same plus the forms of the 14th Doctor as well for short bursts, so no matter what though, pretty interesting to able to actually have David Tennant as part of the forms of the cast members in terms of, you know, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And like I said before, happy 20th anniversary of the film's release of Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. And while looking back on it though, it's pretty entertaining to say the least, especially how impressive the visual effects were. And on top of that, this is where it gets to the point, the fact that where obviously though for the fact that Voldemort will start to come into play in Journey Forms of in the future installments. Specifically though, not only the Deadly Hallows Part 1, oh yeah, speaking of which though, I also did somehow realize that it's been 15 years ago since the Deadly Hallows Part 1 did somehow first came out since 2010. So yeah, happy 15th anniversary of the film's release of Harry Potter and the Deadly Hallows Part 1. So as a result though, because no wonder why, that back then, that the final installment is obviously going to be a two-parter, similar to the forms of how it does it in, well, most finales in terms of film franchise, such as for instance though, I think there's the forms of a two-parter syndrome when it comes to Avengers Infinity War with Endgame to top it off, and on top of all that stuff though, there's also going to be Fast X, which we've already got, and potentially speaking though until specifically 2027 or something like that, we can obviously expect to see Part 2 of Fast X before the actual series concludes for reals. Well, unless if you really don't want to count the spin-offs as far as you can definitely tell, because I always attempt to buy the main installments as opposed to some spin-offs of certain film franchise. So because of that, well, apart from few exceptions here and there, like for instance, I still managed to get myself Sonic OVA on DVD just because I feel like it. And on top of that, Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spend My Vacation, because I've heard so many amazing things about the film, because despite the fact that it was basically originated as a direct-to-video kind of film. So because of that, and it actually works quite well for its time, especially noticeable when it first came out in 1992. Whilst nowadays though, getting the VHS copy is about to get pretty difficult, but thankfully though, that like I said before, countless amount of times in the past, that we still got the American import DVD copy, so this means it actually works flawlessly on our, you know, region-free DVD portable player. Because I was assuming to myself, I was expecting to try to get myself the multi-region DVD player, so that way I can able to enjoy the film on the big screen. But here's the thing though, because like what Maxie has already mentioned about this before, that it's pretty crazy to believe that we somehow still got ourselves 3 different purchasable versions of, you know, Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spend My Vacation. Like, you know, both of them are digital, like for instance though, Apple TV, and on top of that, Xbox Microsoft Store. Well, it's a good thing we did manage to able to got that version just before the actual films category has now been delisted on the Microsoft Store within Xbox or PC, which as a result, it is definitely unfortunate though, but it knows what it is, I suppose. But fortunately though, I can able to actually watch the actual film on the go within my mobile phone, and on top of that, as I mentioned this earlier, the portable DVD player with multi-region coding, and of course, if I was going to watch the film on a big screen, I can either decide to choose the lower pitch version with the Apple TV, or the PAL tone version on, well, Xbox Microsoft Store version. So, at least possibilities were endless when it comes to likely trying to able to actually watch the film these days. So, which I know for a fact that getting the VHS versions nowadays is about to get pretty difficult these days. Not just because the forms of how rare it was, but on top of that, the pricing gets super duper ridiculous these days if you really want to go after the best condition if possible, which I possibly understand why, that most people now prefer to go on to not only DVDs, but in addition to Blu-rays, and even nowadays with 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays these days, and on top of that, digital distribution releases, because that way, you don't have to necessarily try to worry about how bad the picture quality can be, and not to mention though is about the fact that when it comes to like the pricing these days, like I said before, that the VHS is about to get super duper expensive these days, although unlike DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays sometimes, usually DVDs are actually very cheap to get, and then meanwhile when it comes to Blu-rays, they're a little bit expensive, but regardless of such though, unlike the 4K Ultra HD Blu-rays, obviously though they are much more expensive compared to the forms of how it does it for two other media types, so, but that's besides the point. So, anywho, speaking of the 15th anniversary syndrome, here's another game, as far as I do realize, that is also celebrating its 15th anniversary, which appears to be Fling Smash, which does utilizes the Wii Motion Plus peripheral, or specifically nowadays Wii Remote Plus as the actual controller, because you know, Motion Plus is now built in on any other Wii remotes these days back in the day, especially noticeable when they somehow managed to bring up more Wii remote types within not only on the Wii, but also on the Wii U as well, so able to actually get some enhanced capabilities of motion controls with the Wii Remote Plus, such as for instance, you know, The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, Nintendo Land for Zelda Battle Quest mode, and on top of that, Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games, and also any other games in general, which I could probably think about on top of my head, but either way. So, yeah, because as far as I do realize about the forms of Fling Smash, it only came out on the Wii back in 2010, and my goodness, it's been 15 years already. Which, by the way, I've also did manage to found out something that, until potentially speaking though, during at some point later on, and specifically in the beginning portion of December as far as I'm aware, we might able to actually try to celebrate the 15th anniversary of the game's release, not only Super Mario All-Stars Limited Edition on the Wii, but in addition to that though, Donkey Kong Country Returns. So because of that, yeah, I'm really looking forward to able to try to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Donkey Kong Country Returns personally, because gee, no wonder why for the fact that since we're now in 2025, we've got 3 versions of Donkey Kong Country Returns, which is pretty insane. I mean, it will be doubly insane if it does manage to also include the standalone Switch 2 edition, which I don't suppose that's not going to happen, because I think 3 of these versions is going to be plentiful, or should I say is going to be pretty much enough as it stands, because obviously though that is even crazy while looking back in 2018, 2014, and 2016 respectively, that we somehow now managed able to still got whopping 3 versions of Hyrule Warriors, both on the Wii U, 3DS, and Nintendo Switch. So, yeah, it seems pretty crazy kind of thinking about it. Also, same applies with Captain Toad Treasure Tracker as well, that we somehow got the Wii U version, the 3DS version, and the Switch version as well. So, because of that, yeah, it's pretty crazy, all things considered, with all that multitude versions of, or multiple versions, I should say. Sorry for a little bit of a tongue twisting by the end, folks, but that's mainly because, well, as you can definitely tell, I need to try to able to cover up the invisible paths right there, because obviously, though, it's about the fact that it kind of reminds me like a similar kind of level trope as the forms of it, let's just say, Super Mario 3D World, where basically though, if you try to traverse into the invisible paths, if you try to stand onto the invisible platform, obviously though, the actual blue visual thing decides able to show you where you're trying to land on that particular visible path. So because of that, in here this time around though, we have to use the ink to potentially try to reveal the invisible platforms, if you couldn't tell. So... But anyway, so yeah, I guess there's nothing else I can really say. In terms of the forms of Blink Smash has now officially became, well, you know, 15 years old. So yeah, time flies, like I said before. So anyway, let's get into the forms of the main aspect about the forms of today's discussion. And I do apologize for that particular late discussion about this, but even then, we'll pretty much guaranteed able to mention about this right about now. So, for instance, though, yes, the actual nominees list has officially been announced and has also been revealed at the same time for the likes of the Game Awards 2025. And there's a lot to get through. So, first of all, we actually got about, let's just say, a couple of categories ranging from, let's just say, the best ongoing game, and also best performance, best mobile game, and also best art direction, best score and music, and also best audio design, best adaptation, and also best narrative, and even games for impact, and in addition to best community support, best multiplayer, best independent game, and best debuted independent game, and also best VR/AR game, which stands for virtual reality or augmented reality. So anyway, also we have Content Creator of the Year, and also Most Anticipated, which stands for games are going to be coming out until specifically next year in 2026. And also we've got Best Action/Adventure Game, Best Role-Playing Game or Best RPG Game, and also Best Fighting Game, Best Action Game, Innovation in Accessibility, Best Family Game, and also Best Sim/Strategy Game, and also Best Sports/Racing Game, Best Esports Game, and also Best Esports Athlete, and also Best Esports Team, and of course, most notably though, Game of the Year category. So, anyway, let's start from the top. For instance though, we actually got 5 nominees for certain games on the forms of best ongoing games, and those games are Fortnite, pretty much standard stuff, and also Helldivers 2, Final Fantasy XIV, Marvel Rivals, and No Man's Sky. So yeah, I guess that's all there is to say about that. And next up we have is 5 or 6 actors/actresses has actually got nominated for the best performance, which obviously though we somehow got Jennifer English, which she did manage to able to did done a performance in Claire Obscure Expedition 33, and also we got Ben Starr, and also we got Charlie Chox, I think is what it says anyway, and Ekura Eshi, I think is what it says anyway. Again, I must admit though, I do apologize for that particular mispronunciation of those particular actors or actresses or anything else like that. Next up we have is Tori Baker, and finally Keneshu Katu, I think is what it says anyway. So because of that, and they somehow managed to did done the ridiculous amount of acting for the sake of the forms of not only one game, but in particular 6 games, or to be more accurate though, 4 games to be exact. So because of that, 3 of those choices from the likes of in Expedition 33, and 1 of them from the likes of in Ghost of Yeti, and also Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and finally Silent Hill F. So yeah, I guess it's that. And anyway, move along to the next category, which appears to be Best Mobile Game. And so far we've somehow got 5 games, which we do have Destiny Rising, Persona 5 The Phantom X, Sonic Rumble, which I found was very surprising, considering for the fact that that game did recently came out since, you know, a couple of days back, since on the 5th of November. And it's also worth noting for too, that before we get into more details about the particular other 2 games in particular, is that until tomorrow, Kirby Air Riders is releasing tomorrow for Nintendo Switch 2. So because of that, I'm very curious to know what the review scores is going to be turned out to be. I'm hoping it's going to be pretty good, especially noticeable because even then, you know, it's been a very long time since we've last had the Kirby Air Ride game since on the GameCube. So anyway, back on the forms of the best mobile game category. The next two we have is Immature Pretty Derpy, and finally Whittling Waves. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Best Art Direction category, which we do have 5 games as well. So we have Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, Ghost of Yeti, and also Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, and finally Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So yeah, I got nothing else to say about that front. And next up we have is Best Score and Music. Like for instance, we have 6 games on here, we have Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, Ghost of Yeti, and also Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Hollow Knight Silksong, Hades 2, and of course finally Clair Obscur Expedition 33. So yeah, there's a lot of mentioning about the forms of Expedition 33, because I haven't really heard about that game before. I might be able to do some massive research on it to see what that particular game did originally came out on, so... Anyway, next up we have is Best Audio Design, which we do have 5 games being listed, such as Battlefield 6, Clair Obscur Expedition 33, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yoti, and finally Silent Hill F. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Best Adaptation, which as a result we somehow got 5 things on here, which we do have Devil May Cry, and also Splinter Cell, Death Watch, and also Until Dawn, The Last of Us Season 2, and finally a Minecraft movie. Now, unfortunately though, there's one little downside about that particular category to me, is that there's no sign of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie, which I guess for the fact that the majority of those games in particular, including movie adaptations as well, they're most likely going to be focusing on certain aspects of this year only for 2025, not the previous year for 2024, because obviously though, the only time it's been mentioned since last year, with all that best adaptation, which appears to be Knuckles the series, which, I'm not gonna lie though, I'm a little bit mixed on it though, unlike the actual movies themselves, because, you know, the first Sonic movie, and as well as Sonic the Hedgehog 2, and of course Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I always attempt to really enjoy the feature-length films rather than just the TV spin-off series. Although I understand for its canon, but it's just that, well, you know, at the end of the day though, I just felt like that Knuckles the series just feels a bit underwhelming to me because of all that. You know, the major focus is obviously for Wade, so yeah, you can get the idea what I was expecting at this point. In fact, kind of think about it, it's been a year ago since I actually have last watched Knuckles the series, since when it first came out on Paramount Plus, and let me tell you, it might be hard for me to go back into the series at this point in time. Although, again, I understand because of the canon, but regardless of such though, because of the forms of how, yeah, you could get the idea. Anyways, let's move on to the next level right here, which, okay, that's not the right level we can go into, because again, I'll go for these levels in a chronological number order, so let's just say we're going to this level next, so, yeah, this will be, good to go for the sake of time. So, anyway, the next category we have is, Best Narrative, which we do have 5 games on there, such as, for instance, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, and also Ghost of Yoti, and also Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and finally Silent Hill F. So, yeah, I guess it's that. Now, if you're probably wondering, for the fact that I don't think it's going to be anything else possible that it's not going to mention about the forms of both Super Mario Galaxy plus Super Mario Galaxy 2 on Nintendo Switch, because those games are basically ported to the Wii games back then. So because of that, yeah, remakes or ports does not count, only new content. So I understand why. So anyway, let's move on to the next category, which appears to be Games for Impact. Consists of Lost Records, Bloom, and Rage, South of Midnight, and also Wonder Stop, and of course there's also Consume Me, and finally Discipline. I think is what it says anyway. So yeah, I got nothing else to say about it. And next up we have is Best Community Support, which we do have, consist of Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 14, Fortnite, no surprise there, Helldivers 2, and lastly No Man's Sky. So yeah, I guess it's that. Best Multiplayer category, which we do have, Battlefield 6, Elden Ring, Night Ring, and also we've got Peak, Split Fiction, and finally Arc Raiders. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Best Independent Games category, which we do have Op Saloon, I think is what it says anyway, Blueprints, Clair Obscure, Expedition 33, Hades 2, Hollow Knight Silksong, and finally Bull X Pit. So, interesting selection right there. And next up we have is Best Debut Independent Game, which appears to be 5 games as usual. So we have Disablit, and also Dispatch, and also Mega Bunk, Clair Obscure, Expedition 33, and finally Blueprints. So yeah, got nothing else to say about that selection either. And next category we have is Best VR/AR Game, which we have 5 games on here. It consists of Alien Rage or Alien Rogue, Concerning, I think is what it says anyway. And also we've got Arkham Age, and also Ghost Town, Deadpool VR, and finally The Midnight Walk. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Content Creator of the Year, which consist of 5 particular companies in particular, which we do have Cadroll, and also Kai Sinat, and also Moist Critical, and also Sakura Niku, and finally The Burnt Peanut. So yeah, I guess I got nothing else to say about that either. Next up we have is Most Anticipated, stands for games coming out in 2026, and we have 5 games in particular, likely consist of The Witcher 4, Marvel's Wolverine, Grand Theft Auto 6, very obvious, and also we got Resident Evil 9 Requiem, and lastly 007 First Light. So yeah, I guess that's that. Next up we have is Best Action/Adventure Game, which we have 5 games in particular, consist of, well, Death Stranding 2, Ghost of Yeti, and also Hollow Knight Silksong, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and finally Split Fiction. So anyway, next up we have is Best Role-Playing Game category, which we do have 5 games on here, like Monster Hunter Wilds, The Outer Worlds 2, Kingdom Come, Deliverance 2, Clair Obscure, Expedition 33, and finally Evolved. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Best Fighting Game, which we have 2XKO, and in addition to Capcom Fighting Collection 2, Fatal Fury, Cities of the Wolves, Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, and finally Virtua Fighter 5, which is very odd, considering for the fact that that game was actually been out for the longest time, since on the Xbox 360/PlayStation 3, so no matter what though, I honestly have no idea why that Virtua Fighter 5 did somehow made it onto that particular category, so oh well, no big deal, but either way, I guess it's likely for any other, choices for judges as far as I'm aware. Anyways, next up we have is Best Action Game, which we do have 5 games in particular, which there are Hades 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, and also Doom The Dark Ages, Battlefield 6, and finally Shinobi The Art of Vengeance. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Innovation in Accessibility, which we have 4 games in particular, which we have EA Sports FC 26, Doom The Dark Ages, Autumn Fall, and lastly, Assassin's Creed Shadows. So yeah, I guess it's that. Next up we have is Best Family Game, which we have 6 games in particular, which we have Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Split Fiction, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, Lego Party, and Lego Voyagers, which is pretty crazy that we somehow got 2 Lego games have been listed with the forms of Lego Party and Lego Voyagers. So yeah, that seems pretty interesting. And then meanwhile, when it comes to games in particular, we actually got 2 Nintendo games, which we have Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza on the Best Family Game department. So yeah, pretty cool, huh? And on top of that, 2 racing games in particular has been listed, ranging from, Mario Kart World and Sonic Racing Cross Worlds. So because of that, I bet there's a lot of fans out there who are already predicting Sonic Racing Cross Worlds will make its way into one of those winning awards in the next category, which we'll get into later. So for now, a pretty interesting selection with the Best Family Game. So Anyway, move along to the next category, which we have Best Sim/Strategy Game, which we have 6 games in particular, consist of The Alters, in addition to Jurassic World Evolution 3, Civilization 7, Tempest Rising, and 2 Point Museum, and lastly, Final Fantasy Tactics, the Avalanche Chronicles. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much about it. Next up we have is Best Sports/Racing Game, which we do have 5 games in particular, which we have Mario Kart World, Sonic Racing Cross Worlds, which I believe that some fans out there was expecting to be voting for Sonic Racing Cross Worlds for that category. And on top of that, EA Sports FC 26, Formula 1 25, or F1 I should say, F1 25, and lastly, Rematch. So, yeah, it's a pretty interesting lineup. And next up we have is Best EA or Esports Game, which we have 5 games in particular, which we have Mobile Legends Bang Bang, and Valorant, and also League of Legends, Dota 2, and finally Counter-Strike 2. So, yeah, I guess it's that. And we only got about 3 categories left. So next up we have is Best Esports Athletes, consist of 6 of them to be exact, ranging from Broke, and also Grothy, and also Forsaken, and even with Kai Karu, and Manord, and finally Zuru, I think is what it says anyway. Next up we have is the Best Esports Team, which we do have, let's just say, 5 teams in particular, consist of Gen G, NRG, and also Team Falcons, and Team Liquid PH, and finally Team Virtuala. I think it's what it says anyway. And now we go on to the final category, which is of course the main event, or should I say the main aspect, is the Game of the Year, which we do have 6 games on here, which we have Claire Obscure Expedition 33, Hades 2, Donkey Kong Bonanza, which is pretty cool that that game recently got nominated, so yeah, I'm very happy about that. Hollow Knight Silksong, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, and finally Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. So yeah, quite an interesting library of games as far as I do realize, in terms of nominees for this year in particular for 2025. So yeah, I'm very curious to know about the ones that the actual final results are, because even then, I somehow was expecting to let Donkey Kong Bonanza at least get one of those awards in particular, likely also Best Family Game in particular, because that game is really, really good, especially because, well, I'm still in the actual process when it comes to fully 100%ing everything in that game, just because I'm still trying to go for, you know, every single Banana Mania gems, and on top of all that stuff though, just well, anything else in general, including coming up and during at some point by the end of the month, I can able to try to go and keep on playing through Emerald Rush DLC, so just in case I can able to actually guarantee to get some more statues based off from 2 of those Kongs in particular do manage to able to make their first appearance since Donkey Kong 64 consists of, you know, Chunky Kong and Lanky Kong. So yeah, that'll be pretty fantastic if I was able to try to go for that stuff. I know for the fact that, again, some players attempt to say for the fact that the DLC is very underwhelming, which it is true because of the phones that why the heck did they manage to bring the price tag for that as opposed to, like, you know, being for free? Because, you know, unlike Super Mario Odyssey, at the very least with Luigi's Blue World, it's for free. Back in 2018, that is. But for whatever reason, though, it's just the consumers is about to change, you know? But oh well, no big deal, though. But at the very least, though, I'm quite happy as it is when it comes to more specifically with the game's library of the actual awards. So anyway, so let's move on to the next category, or the next thing, or the next subject I want to classify for mentioning about that. It's been 25 years since Crash Bash did somehow first came out on the PlayStation, and no matter what though, it's about the fact that, ironically enough, that particular game did came out the exact same year as in not only the English version of Mario Party 2, but in addition to that, Sonic Shuffle as well, which, gee, no wonder why there are so many party games back in the millennium year in the 2000s. So, well, despite the fact that the European PAL version of Sonic Shuffle didn't come out until 2001, so no matter what though, we can pretty much expect it was to come either way. So, anyway, and while looking back on Crash Bash after 25 years since when that game first came out, it was alright, but it's just that I know a lot of people complain about the forms of 200%ing the game. Is a bit of a nightmare, plus it's mainly because of a lot of repetition has been going on, and not to mention though, too many collectibles ranging from, you know, trophies, and crystals, and gems, and not to mention though, gold relics and platinum relics, because as far as I can definitely tell, that those two things in particular, the gold relics and the platinum relics, are very painful to get, because, wanna know why? You have to go through the entire minigame, and also as a result, you have to beat the hardest possible AI, or impossible AI, I should say. And relatively speaking, though, as for gold relics, you have to win the actual minigame twice in a row. And then meanwhile, for the platinum relics, you have to go for the entire minigame, you have to win them 3 times in a row, because if you mess up once, then you have to start all over again with this whole win streak. So because of that, gee, no wonder why 100% in the game or 200% in Crash Bash is a bit of a nightmare. Likely also for the sake of the forms of trying to get the platinum relics in particular, so yeah, I can totally see that circumstances either way. And also, as far as I'm aware, since that we're actually getting very close to the weekend, as far as I realized, that, mind you, I was able to actually try and let Blaze the Cat were able to mention about that particular subject until then, because there's also another subject I would like to talk about this as well. It's also been 25 years ago since that particular movie did somehow first came out, which appears to be Rugrats in Paris the movie, since in 2000. So, yeah, time flies, what you expect. Especially because, while looking back, that Rugrats only has like 3 animated films ranging from, you know, the original in 1998, and then the second one in Paris in 2000, and then the third and final one in 2003, which appears to be Rugrats Go Wild, at least as far as I do somehow remember that correctly. So regardless of such though, yeah, time flies, with all these films that somehow usually came out to be, so anywho, the next thing I want to talk about this for the sake of time is that, potentially speaking though, for the fact that no matter what though, we actually got ourselves about, I would say, 90 tracks in total for the next game has been added to the Nintendo Music application. Like, for instance, not only we have 1, but 2 games combined within Wii Fit and Wii Fit Plus. So as a result, I'm generally surprised about that actually, especially considering for the fact that despite I used to play Wii Fit or Wii Fit Plus back then, but ultimately though, I somehow for whatever reason give up on that particular games as far as I do realize, because even then, I much rather prefer to have like physical exercise, likely for a lot of emphasis on walking, and on top of that, just trying to able to actually do a lot of actions, you know? Like, for instance though, I can able to try to fly, like the flying squirrels usually always attempt to do that. But either way, I just get ahead of myself. So either way, it's a good thing we did somehow activate this thing from earlier, so that way we can able to get into the next boss kettle, which as far as I'm aware, the next boss fight we're about to face off against, what appears to be, well, after we somehow managed to check out this little upgrade thing right there, the next boss we're about to be face off against is Octowell. So this will be interesting. So, anywho, so yeah, I've got nothing else to say, although I suppose there's technically the final thing I want to discuss upon actually, and I found this to be very unexcusable, and on top of that, pretty ridiculous at the same time. Have you guys ever heard about this particular very strange and very odd toys out there, which appears to be La Boo Boo? Yeah, I'm not joking, right? These are the actual toys' name, and that's what appears to be, you know, La Boo Boo. And those particular collectible plushies were somehow first created in Hong Kong illustrator Seng Lang. And no matter what though, is about the fact that they obviously do have like, you know, cutie eyes and all that stuff, and same applies to the sharp teeth as well. And no matter what though, they look a bit creepy and disturbing at the same time to me. And to make matters even much more crazy than this, is that for whatever reason, Sony Pictures is developing the actual film based off of those particular creepy toys like these. I mean, they're popular for its time, but it's just that they have a lot of questionable choices out there with all, like, I'm probably not going to mention something a little bit more obscurity or anything else like that, but anyway. And also, the final thing I want to mention about this is that, obviously though, it is so sad for the fact that one of those particular comic issues focuses on Shadow the Hedgehog has officially been cancelled out of nowhere. Like, apparently though, someone did manage to point out that there's actually some sad news that one of the one-shot comic issue of focusing on Shadow was being cancelled. And no matter what though, that we are very sad to hear that, because everyone else was expecting there might be a villain of that particular comic, which, even then, I'll talk more about that and during at some point until tomorrow. Also, for the fact that I don't suppose if you noticed, it did snow earlier, which as a result, that honestly caught me off guard. Whenever I saw the snow, did somehow manage to appear in November month, which I was just first thought it was going to be something like winter or December, January, February only kind of moment, but somehow the snow actually attempts to appear likely on a rare occurrence in November, which I was like, okay, that's rather odd. But anyway, the boss fight is pretty much done, if you couldn't tell. And oh no, this particular boss is a little bit tricky, but nowhere near as, like, as tricky compared to the forms of how it does on the final stretch of the game. So, yeah, for the most part, we did somehow thrash him like nothing else. So either way, that pretty much does it for this boss fight against with Octowhirl. So, yeah, pretty cool. So, yeah, in fact, ironically enough, it actually did took me for about one attempt to able to actually deal with this fight. So, not too shabby. So, anyway, so I believe that pretty much does it for World 3, despite the fact that once again, I did somehow miss out on, Sunken Scrolls, so as a result, hopefully I'll be back for those probably at some point until next week, which is especially noticeable considering for the fact that we were able to get these worlds done before we're able to actually get into backtracking moments, likely trying to go after some more scrolls and what have you, so, but anyway. And also what I've noticed is about the fact that the villain's name is actually called Bones the Falcon on that particular cancellation Shadow comic. So, yeah, it's kind of sad though for the fact that hopefully we're able to actually get that villain show up at some point one day. But we'll never know up to this point. So because of that, yeah, it kind of feels a bit, you know, upsetting for some Sonic fans out there. Or should I say, the majority of the Sonic fans out there. So, oh well, no big deal, but stuff happens, unfortunately, so. Anyway, so we can now able to actually access to the 4th world in this particular single-player campaign. Although you might able to realize that this place is actually called Octo Valley, so it's why I classified that. All thanks to the forms that particular main hub world in Inkopolis, if you do manage to go back there at the very least, so. Anyway, so we've now able to actually try to utilize these propellers right there in order to able to progress. So anyway, so it looks like we somehow made it into World 4 within, like, you know, a couple of obstacles we ain't had to get used to. So anyways though, with that being said folks, is that we should probably end things off this point right here. So join me next time for more of Let's Play of Splatoon for the Nintendo Wii U, is that we're going into some more levels in World 4, and hopefully though, we're able to actually get some more scrolls here and there. So I'll see you guys until tomorrow.